Welcome to Salonpreneur Magazine, the podcast. And today, welcome to Wendy Garcarz, who is our business strategy specialist and futurist and all things wonderful, and also specialist in later life business changes and decisions and development and stuff. And is founder of Refirement. So welcome, Wendy.
Hello, welcome, and thank you very much for having me today.
That's okay. Always a pleasure to talk to you. So this quarter, your article was all about is in this edition of the winter edition of Salonpreneur Magazine, and we're talking about from chair to change maker beyond the mirror. And everything you do and everything you write in the magazine is aimed at not necessarily even later life, but just people thinking about what their later life career is going to look like. You don't have to be 50 plus or 55 plus to be thinking about what your exit plan is going to be. You know, it's something we probably should all be thinking about even at the beginning of our career, we should be thinking about.
Yeah.
And so your article in this edition talks about some of the things that you can do to have like that kind of second, like a rebirth almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of what happens when you decide that you need to put the scissors down, or you need to put your hands down if you're a massage therapist. Like I feel now, my hands hurt.
Yeah.
It's time. I keep thinking it's time.
I think for me, it's lots of people, because they are they've got their head down, they're running at the problem, they're running at their business, keeping everything afloat, all the balls up in the air, particularly when an industry is going through the sort of challenging times that yours is at the moment.
Definitely.
And it's very easy to sort of limp towards that sort of landmark time that you may have or not in your head that says at this point I probably need to start thinking about retiring. But it's then thinking about what you do about that, because for me, all of the people that I speak to who have been very active entrepreneurs and business owners, think that retirement is what they want, but when they actually get there, it turns out to be not what they thought it would be. And so that usually it can be anything between 3 and 6 months, but by 6 months they're tearing their hair out and thinking, well, is this all there is? You know, you can only drink so much cheap coffee in a garden centre for so long, and you feel that that's fulfilling, because if you've had an active brand and if you've run a business, it may not be ticking that box for you. So what I wanted to do with the article was say to people, if that's you, if you are going down that route and starting to think about it, think about all of your options. Don't automatically assume that because of circumstances or whatever, you're starting to feel tired maybe and a bit, and a bit jaded around the edges. Don't assume that you'll always be like that, because, when you find you're entering this phase of your life, very often it feels like a freedom. It feels like a rebirth, because you're leaving behind some of the things that may have held you back in terms of some of the obligations that you carried. And this is a different world, and it's getting people to think much more broadly about what that could look like.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at my swimming class this morning that I go to, and being on a Tuesday morning, there's a few of us that work from home that kind of take a break and go off and do the class, but there's also a very large number of retired ladies there. And I was saying to them this morning, knowing that I was going to come on here this afternoon as well, is that I don't know that I'll ever be able to retire. And I think part of it is that entrepreneurial thing.
Yes.
Like the brain's always ticking. There's always something you could be doing. Whereas most of the ladies there, they all were really relishing their retirement. They all worked and were employed, and they had jobs with pensions, which helps. But they all really enjoy their time. And they were saying, like whether it's just sort of like taking the dog for a walk or going for a coffee with a friend or looking after the grandchildren, the time passes so quickly, they don't believe they could fit anything else in now. And it's like, I said to them, I'm 59 this year. So I've got another 8 years, or 8.5 years. And I don't know that I'm ever going to want to stop. And I think
And I think the reality is you might that may not be a decision that's in your
no,
hands.
indeed, there's no thing.
Because
Definitely
if we
that.
look at the longevity, with Refirement, we conducted quite a big piece of research. We've just launched a new longevity coaching program
Mm,
to help people to navigate this time in their
yeah,
life. And it is very complex, it's very multi-layered. One of the things that we looked at was what is this thing called the longevity era?
yeah,
And increasingly, what you realize is that if you're going to live 20 or 30 years beyond retirement age,
mm,
unless you are on an incredibly fantastic index linked gold
yeah,
plated pension, your
yeah,
money will run out. But
yeah,
your money will run out by the time you are approaching that last stage in your life.
yeah,
And not everybody wants that to happen. And so longevity is something you have to plan for. And it's no good waiting until 3 weeks before you retire to think to yourself, well, what am I going to do next? And,
yeah,
and for me, what I wanted the article to do was I wanted to say, don't wait until you've made the decision about when you're going to retire.
mm,
Start to have some thoughts and some opinions about what that would look like now,
yeah,
because if you are one of those individuals that may not have thought about your pension or whatever else, or your business is your pension,
yeah,
then it's like people say to me, well, my turnover is 2 million quid, so I'm going to sell my business for 2 million quid. Well, it don't work like that. And so if you come out of that business with 500,000, you're doing
yeah,
okay.
mm,
And how long in real terms, how long is 500,000 quid going to last you?
yeah. Yeah,
It's
in
that
today's world, it's
really.
not long,
No,
especially if you want to go on a few holidays and buy a car that's going to see you through your latter years and all of those things, especially, when we go and buy an electric car,
yeah. And
there's so many different things, isn't there, that can impact our finances.
it's huge. And
Care,
it's also
healthcare.
about your quality of life.
Mm,
That for me, I have never met anybody who is willing to take a lower standard of the quality of their life when they retire. In
yeah,
actual fact, what they want to do, because this is what they've been led to believe, is that this is the time when things get better. This
yeah,
isn't the time when you start to choose between whether you put the heating on or whether you have beef for your
yeah,
Sunday lunch. This is,
that's it.
you're supposed to be able to go into it with a lot of that anxiety alleviated.
Yeah,
Well, not if you haven't done any planning, it won't. So
no,
it was really to get people to think about that and to say, um, working and earning an income are two different things.
yeah,
So for me, obviously I'm earning an income in terms
yeah,
of what I do, but I don't consider myself to be working. I
no.
know that sounds mad, but the
I
things that
think that's
I
because
do,
you're so passionate about what you do.
exactly.
And it's like me, like we were just saying before we started recording with me, it's like for years I've like donated my time and my
Yeah.
life to my industry. And at the moment I'm actually being paid to do something, which is really amazing.
Mm,
But and I'm not going to tell them this, but I probably would have done it for nothing anyway,
yeah.
because I'm that kind of person, because it is work, but it is that thing, because you enjoy it and you're passionate about it. It isn't like a job.
It isn't, but we have to be careful, and this is the other thing in the
Mm,
article. You have to be careful not to undersell your expertise as well and
absolutely.
undervalue that expertise, because if you've developed that expertise over 40 years, why should you give it away?
Yeah,
And
indeed.
and while you're giving it away, why are you investing in somebody else's business making money?
Yeah,
That's the way to look at it.
yeah,
So for
absolutely.
me, it's about if you start to think about that now, over a cup of tea and while you're reading the magazine, have a think about what that might look like for you. And you might be surprised at some of the answers that
Yeah,
come back. And some people will say, do you know what? I can't wait to retire. I've worked hard all my life. That's great. You can't make the assumption that is a solution that everybody wants,
yeah,
because we're different people and we live different
yeah.
lives.
It's not, and I was saying that I do think that when you've had a business and you've been so invested in something, I do think it's quite hard to kind of walk away from it and have nothing for your brain to filter, no
Yeah,
decisions to make. no thoughts about what's going to happen in 6 months' time, and are the staff going to do this? And I think if you suddenly take that all away, it's quite a big change, isn't it? And I think, retirement is historically and is a known thing to be quite a challenging change.
Yes,
and
it
many
is.
people get quite depressed when they retire, and they find it a real struggle for that first 6 months, a year, 2 years, until life kind of rebalances. So
I
having
think that's
something
true.
to transition you out of your business and into a more sedate way of living.
I think there's something more fundamental as well, Sue, about that, is that if you speak to lots of people, they will say the thing that they dread most about the whole idea of getting old is losing their mental acuity.
Oh God, yeah.
That's singularly, that's the biggest fear that
Yeah,
people have.
yeah,
Um, and yet they do nothing at all to safeguard that. And the thing that safeguards your mental acuity is all linked in with your lifestyle. It's linked in with your diet. It's linked in with your exercise. It's linked in with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's all of those things. Now, for some people, buying a Sudoku book and completing that cover to cover is the way they do it. For me, I've always been I'm a great debater. So I'm
yeah,
curious by nature, and I can look at a problem. It doesn't matter whether it's linked to something that I know a lot about or linked to an industry I've never even worked in before. I will hear a fact or a situation and it will intrigue me. And so what I do is I'll go and find out about it because I'm curious. So I'll go and ask questions and I think, okay, well, what would I think about that? Whatever. That's my mental exercise.
yeah, yeah,
And as long as I'm doing that, I know that I'm taking care of that part of my body because your brain, your brain cells deteriorate if you don't use them. So we
yeah,
have to be careful that there is a world of difference between taking it easy and
yeah,
actually stagnating mentally.
yeah,
And these are things that if they're important to you, you need to be thinking about, okay, well, what do I need to put in place to make sure that doesn't happen?
yeah. Is I think as well, one of the things that you write about is about that legacy thing and working
Yeah,
out what you're leaving behind. And I know for me, like, and I'm sure for all of us that, that have had salons and stuff, that bricks and mortar, or even generally it's a bricks and mortar salon that
yeah,
you can hand down or sell on or whatever. And I know, I sold my salon. I was very fortunate. I was in a position I was able to sell it. And I know that business is still going, it's still thriving. And every time I go down to Kent and I drive past it, I still have that moment of like, I did that. And
mm.
it is important to have that and still
Yeah,
be
it is.
have that pride in what I achieved over that 10 years and all the stuff that led me to open it and everything. And I think, trying to work out how you can kind of leave that legacy behind, but still take something from it is a really important thing, isn't it?
It is because if you've created something, you've put a piece of yourself into that. You've put lots of pieces of yourself into that, and so it's really important from a sense of identity point of view, that you're able to acknowledge that, you're able to celebrate it, and you're able to see the difference that you've made. And for lots of us, that's what really matters as we do age, and as we do get to the stage where we are starting to slow down, because at some point, from a physical point of view, that will happen anyway. None of us would like to believe that we've been here and actually we've made no difference. None of us would want that. So the legacy part of what you do is incredibly important. And I was having this conversation with somebody about every life that you touch. And if
Mm,
you think about just take salons, for
mm,
example, ultimately, how many apprentices have they had on board? How many people have they developed? Not how many professionals have they trained, but how many people have they developed? Because if you think about your industry in particular, you don't just train to cut hair or to do nails or to do massage. You train in one of the most important skills that anybody will have, and that's communication.
mm. Yeah,
Your professionals who work in your industry understand how to create rapport. That
yeah,
is incredibly valuable, and it cuts across everything that you do in life, whether it's
yeah,
linked with your work or not, everything. These are legacies that matter because we can't guarantee that what has happened up to now will continue to happen in
no.
the future.
And we know that, just, if you want to start going down like the really serious side of the business world with our industry, the VAT impact, business
massive
impact, at the moment, those two things and the pressures it's putting on, particularly our employing salons, is unrelenting, and they are closing week after week. There's more and more businesses closing, and more really long-term, business professionals who've had their salons for like 20, 30, 40 years are just going, lease is up, I'm out of here. And it's and so they're kind of having it thrust upon them, and I think that's a really difficult. I mean, I was lucky I had a choice, and a lot of people I know have left their businesses with a choice, but for so many now they feel they have no choice but to close.
But do you know what, Sue? I don't think there's any real thought about the wider social impact that this is having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you look at our, high streets, so if you go back a couple of decades, 20, 30 years, our high streets were vibrant. They were filled with people. They were filled with communications. People were having conversations. People were developing friendships. People were trading. They had work to do. I think of some of the really quite affluent areas that I grew up in. And you look around now, their high streets are dying on their feet. They're absolutely dying on their feet. You don't go to town like you used to on a Saturday and do your shopping, because for most people, they get stuff online. And what they don't realise is that every time you shop online, you're shopping with somebody that is not subject to the same rules and the same charges and the same legislation than if you have a shop. Just take business rates. Anything that you buy off the internet, there's no business rate attached to it. Now, that was bad enough when it was like 10 or 12 grand on a property a year. But some properties now, even just ordinary basic shops on high streets, you're looking at £25,000 just for the business rate. So our world is changing because people are choosing to shop differently. The legacy that you're leaving might never come back again. We might never see that day again. And so it's your bit of history that you're passing on as well, and that matters.
And I think, we, like you were saying about how we build rapport, we have to, and especially, I mean, I think with every part of salon world and wellness world, we have to immediately make rapport with people. We have to. And, like I had a new client in from a massage the other day, and she'd literally flown in from somewhere else, was visiting her husband. They're both in the services. So she'd flown in from one base to come to visit him for a little while. And then she's like thrown into my salon because he booked her a treatment. She doesn't even know where she is, let alone who I am. It's like, and in that first like 2 to 5 minutes, I've got to make her feel comfortable to strip down to her knickers and put a towel over her. Which she complies with because she knows the process and everything. So she comes understanding that's going to happen. But we have to make people feel comfortable very, very rapidly.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
Very rapidly. More than if you walk into a shop that sells furniture, the salesman's going to come over and they're going to try and build rapport, but it's always a little bit awkward because you know what you want and you know what they're trying to sell you, and you get all of that. There's a very different chemistry between how we operate, because I think we have to operate on a very human level, more so than any other industry.
Well, it's the intimacy of what you do that is the real game changer, isn't it? I mean, you don't have to take your clothes off to go and sit on a settee and figure that out, do you?
No, let's hope not.
So there is that element to it, and I do think there are always going to be things that need to be done, that you can't do over the internet, and your industry's part of that. You can't have your hair cut over the internet, you can't have your nails done over the internet, you can't have a massage done over the internet. So to a degree, that piece of it is always going to be there, but it will look very different to how it did maybe a decade ago.
And already, and I'm sure we probably had this conversation previously, is that we know that because there are vast numbers of bricks and mortar salons closing, they're all, there's this phrase of like, they're going home or they're going mobile or whatever. But generally, most owners are, if they do decide to remain in the industry, go home, they create a garden space, an in-home space, a garage space, whatever. But it is but the legacy then stops because they're not handing anything on to anybody else, and they can't have an apprentice in that situation necessarily because it just doesn't warrant it. So our apprenticeship levels are going down.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I know you've got a whole thing, what do we call it, whatever it's called, the wisdom bridge, I can't think what the word.
Bridge.
Yeah, but the wisdom bridge, that whole sort of protocol of that, like that knowledge, like coming down the waterfall from the older people to the younger people, and also going back up. We're gonna get into a place where we've lost that in the industry.
Yeah.
And anything we can do to transfer that legacy of what's in the people's heads that are going to be leaving our industry in the next 10 years, they need to find a way to document that, because that's how our younger people are going to find out how to do things, is by we aren't going to be able to do it by osmosis or by hierarchy in a salon, or by just someone coming up to you and going, oh, how do you mix that color, or what move would you do here, what oils would you blend, or what color polish. We're going to lose that questioning opportunity, and so we need to have our answers left somewhere.
I think that for me, the way I would differentiate that is that there's a world of difference telling somebody what you do as opposed to why you do it. And the what you do is really the doing a permanent wave, or they're doing a colour, or they're doing eyebrow threading, or whatever it is you do. Those are the things that you do, and they can learn that really easily. But the why you do it, in terms of, and we've talked about this, the intimacy of that relationship, the fact that they'll probably tell their hairdresser or their therapist things that they wouldn't even tell their best friend.
No, absolutely.
And so the additional service that you offer is that confidence, and that is unlike anything else that you find in other industries, and it's making sure that the legacy of that is kept as well, because if they're not able to offload in that way with anybody else, what impact is that